popular culture makes the Roaring Twenties look like one big glamorous party. Flappers twirling in sequins, champagne flowing from fountains, and jazz playing non-stop in elegant ballrooms. But the reality of America's most infamous decade was way more intense and dangerous than anything you've seen in the movies. When Prohibition hit in 1920, it didn't stop Americans from drinking. It just pushed an entire nation's nightlife underground, creating the most explosive and deadly party scene in history. Oh, and if you're enjoying these stories, I'd really appreciate a like or subscribe. Super curious where you're all listening from, so drop a comment with your location and what time it is there. Always blows my mind how people are falling asleep to this all over the world. All right, let's head back to 1920s America. Trust me, it's going to be quite a ride. But first, get comfortable. Seriously. Adjust those pillows, pull up that blanket, because where we're going, you're going to want to be cozy. So congratulations, you just woke up in January 1920. The sheets beneath you aren't Egyptian cotton like your bed right now. They're rough, a bit scratchy, and the mattress has seen better days, stuffed with horsehair that occasionally pokes through. Your boarding house room is small, just enough space for a bed, a side table, and a hook for your few clothes. The radiator in the corner hisses and clanks but barely warms the room. Outside your window, snow falls on a Chicago street. You can hear the elevated train rattling by, belching coal smoke that mixes with the frigid morning air. Car horns honk as Model Ts navigate slushy roads. A milk wagon still pulled by horses clatters by. This is a world between times, part modern, part Victorian, caught in a moment of radical transformation. You roll out of bed, your feet hitting the cold wooden floor. The boarding house offers no private bathroom. You'll share one down the hall with 5 other tenants. The newspapers on your nightstand carry troubling headlines. As of today, January 17th, 1920, Prohibition has officially begun. The 18th Amendment is now the law of the land. The manufacture, transport, and sale of alcoholic beverages is illegal throughout the United States. You head downstairs for breakfast. The boarding house dining room buzzes with conversation about this new dry era. A factory worker jokes, "Well, I guess we're all going to be saints now." Everyone laughs. They all know better. "My cousin knows a guy," a young secretary whispers. Leaning in, says he's opening a little place next week. Password only. Within days, Prohibition would birth something entirely new in American life. The speakeasy. The term itself wasn't new. Since the 1880s, speakeasy had referred to illicit bars in areas with restricted alcohol sales, but now these underground drinking establishments would transform from isolated oddities to the central feature of American nightlife. The speed with which they appeared was astonishing. When legal saloons closed their doors, speakeasies opened almost overnight, sometimes literally in the same locations, just with a new hidden entrance and a password system. You walk to work through neighborhoods transforming before your eyes. That pharmacy on the corner, by next month it'll have a secret back room where you can get something stronger than cough syrup. The basement entrance to that tailor shop, soon you'll need to whisper a password to get in. That nondescript door with no sign, it'll lead to a jazz club serving bootleg gin by Valentine's Day. Within just 5 years, New York City alone would have an estimated 30,000 speakeasies. Chicago, where you now live, would soon boast thousands of its own. Americans weren't about to let a little thing like federal law stop them from having a good time. By February, your boarding house friends have discovered 3 speakeasies within walking distance. One night after work, they invite you along. "Just tell them Joey sent you," your friend explains as you approach a nondescript door in an alley, and whatever you do, don't look nervous. You knock 3 times. A small window slides open, revealing a pair of suspicious eyes. "Joey sent me," you say, trying to sound casual. The door swings open to reveal a narrow staircase leading down to a basement. The sound of jazz drifts up, along with cigarette smoke and laughter. At the bottom, you enter a room that looks nothing like the seedy hole-in-the-wall you expected. The speakeasy is surprisingly elegant. Tables covered with white cloths surround a small dance floor. A four-piece band plays jazz in the corner. Piano, drums, trumpet, and saxophone. Well-dressed men and women sip from teacups and coffee mugs. Their contents definitely not tea or coffee. The air is thick with tobacco smoke and perfume. "First time?" asks the bartender as you approach. He's wearing a vest and bow tie, looking professional as he wipes a glass. You nod. "Well, we got beer, we got whiskey, we got gin. What's your pleasure?" This is your first taste of bootleg liquor, and the experience is interesting. The beer is watery and flat. The whiskey burns your throat more than it should. The gin, well, it's better not to think too hard about what's in the gin. "Bathtub gin," your friend explains with a grin. "Some guys literally mix it in their bathtubs. Grain alcohol, water, and juniper berry juice if you're lucky. Sometimes they just add juniper oil to industrial alcohol." The quality of bootleg alcohol varied wildly in the early days of Prohibition. Some speakeasies managed to sell pre-Prohibition stock smuggled from Canada or Europe, but as that supply dwindled, most resorted to moonshine and bathtub concoctions. Some bootleggers even sold industrial alcohol, wood, alcohol, or other toxic substances that could cause blindness, paralysis, or death. Between 1920 and 1925, deaths from alcohol poisoning skyrocketed. The very government that banned alcohol to protect Americans from its dangers had inadvertently created a far deadlier drinking culture. But people accepted the risk. The allure of the forbidden, the thrill of breaking the law, and the unique atmosphere of the speakeasy proved irresistible. For the first time in American history, men and women drank together in public. Before Prohibition, saloons had been almost exclusively male territories. Now, women not only entered these new drinking establishments, they became their most enthusiastic patrons. By spring, your weekly speakeasy visits have become a ritual. You've learned to recognize the signs of a police raid, a particular knock, a light flashed twice in the window, a code word shouted across the room. When it happens, everyone moves with practiced efficiency. Bottles disappear under tables or into hidden compartments. Drinking cups are quickly emptied into potted plants or down special drains. By the time police break through the door, everyone's sipping Coca-Cola and discussing the weather. Most raids were just for show anyway. Corruption became an integral part of Prohibition. Police officers, Prohibition agents, judges, and politicians all had their hands out. Speakeasy owners factored regular payoffs into their business expenses. Those who didn't pay faced frequent raids and arrests. Those who did were largely left alone. One night in your now favourite speakeasy, a new band takes the stage. The trumpet player is extraordinary, his sound unlike anything you've heard before. The crowd falls silent as he plays, his cheeks puffed, his fingers dancing over the valves. This is the sound of something new being born. Jazz existed before Prohibition, of course, developing in New Orleans and spreading north with the Great Migration, but speakeasies became jazz's most important incubator. By 1925, Louis Armstrong would be revolutionizing the art form in Chicago. Duke Ellington would soon lead his orchestra at the Cotton Club in Harlem. Jelly Roll Morton, Bessie Smith, and countless others would find eager audiences in speakeasies across America. The marriage of jazz and illegal drinking created an entirely new American atmosphere, one of rebellion, spontaneity, and racial mixing that scandalized traditional society. White patrons flocked to black-owned clubs to hear black musicians. Wealthy socialites danced alongside working-class immigrants. College students mingled with gangsters. The social barriers that rigidly structured American life began to dissolve in these underground spaces. By summer, you've become a regular at 3 different speakeasies, each with its own character. One caters to the working class with cheap beer and basic surroundings. Another attracts a wealthier crowd with imported liquor and elegant furnishings. The third is known for its exceptional jazz and mixed-race clientele. But the relatively innocent early days of Prohibition were already giving way to something darker. As demand for illegal alcohol grew, organized crime moved in to control the supply. One night, the atmosphere in your favorite speakeasy changes. Men in expensive suits enter, looking around with calculating eyes. The owner greets them nervously, ushering them to the best table. The band plays on, but everyone seems tense. Capone's guys, your friend whispers. Al Capone was just beginning his rise to power in Chicago, having moved from New York in 1920 at the invitation of Johnny Torrio. By 1925, he would control most of Chicago's bootlegging operations, along with gambling, prostitution, and other rackets. His annual income would reach $60 million, over $900 million in today's money. Capone wasn't alone. In New York, Meyer Lansky and Lucky Luciano built similarly vast criminal empires. In Detroit, the Purple Gang controlled bootlegging across the Canadian border. In cities large and small, gangsters exploited Prohibition to build criminal organizations of unprecedented size and power. Violence inevitably followed. Territorial disputes erupted into gun battles on city streets. Hijackings of liquor shipments became common. Rivals were eliminated in spectacular public assassinations. By the mid-1920s, Chicago averaged more than 500 gang murders per year. Many never solved, many more never even investigated. The ultimate expression of this violence would come in 1929 with the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, when 7 men from Bugs Moran's gang were lined up against a garage wall and executed by Capone's men disguised as police officers. But that was still years away. For now, in 1920, you're just beginning to understand how Prohibition is transforming America. What began as a moral crusade backed by temperance groups, religious leaders, and progressive reformers has unleashed forces no one anticipated. Far from creating a more virtuous society, Prohibition has birthed a nationwide underground culture of law-breaking, corruption, and violence, along with unprecedented social freedom and artistic innovation. Fall arrives, and your speakeasy adventures continue. You've learned the lingo now. You don't ask for whiskey, you ask for tea. Beer is near beer. A flask is a striped kitty. Police are Johnny Law. To be drunk is to be spifflicated, ossified, or zozzled. One October evening, you're sipping a surprisingly good bourbon, smuggled from Kentucky, the bartender assures you, when a commotion erupts at the door. It's not the police this time. A group of society women in expensive coats and short dresses sweep in, already laughing and talking loudly. They order cocktails with confident familiarity. These are the first flappers you've seen up close. Their hair is bobbed short under stylish hats. Their dresses barely reach their knees. They wear makeup boldly, red lipstick and dark eyeshadow. They smoke cigarettes in long holders, gesturing dramatically as they talk. Everything about them defies traditional notions of feminine propriety. They were at a rally earlier, someone explains, for women's suffrage. But women already got the vote, you say, confused. The 19th Amendment had been ratified in August, just a few months ago. State offices now, they want women in the state legislature. The arrival of these political flappers reminds you how many transformations are happening simultaneously in 1920. Prohibition is just one current in a river of change that includes women's rights, racial consciousness, technological advancement, and artistic innovation. As winter settles in, your speakeasy becomes something of a second home. The initial novelty has worn off, replaced by comfortable familiarity. You know the bartenders by name, you have favourite tables and preferred drinks. The original sense of danger has faded into routine, though the risk remains very real. On a snowy December night, you're there when something truly dangerous happens. Two men argue at the bar, their voices growing louder until one pulls a gun. Everyone freezes. The band stops playing. In the sudden silence, you can hear the click as the man cocks his revolver. The owner steps in, somehow calming the situation. The gun disappears. The man is escorted out. The band resumes playing, though the mood remains tense. This wasn't just speakeasy theatre. It was a glimpse of how quickly violence could erupt in this new environment where the law and order existed only as concepts, not realities. As 1920 comes to a close, you reflect on how dramatically American social life has changed in just 1 year. Prohibition was supposed to end drinking. Instead, it transformed drinking into a national obsession, a form of rebellion, and a new kind of social glue. Speakeasies have become America's most important social institutions, places where rigid boundaries of gender, class, and sometimes even race dissolve in a haze of illegal alcohol and revolutionary music. You've witnessed the birth of modern American nightlife, and it's only just beginning. The next decade will see speakeasy culture expand and evolve, becoming ever more elaborate and influential. Cocktails will be invented to mask the taste of inferior liquor. Fashion will adapt to the new social environment. Music will continue to develop in response to this unique cultural moment. On New Year's Eve, 1920, your speakeasy is packed beyond capacity. The air is thick with smoke. The band plays frantically as couples dance the new steps everyone's learning. Bootleg champagne flows freely, though it's hardly the quality you'd find in a legal establishment. At midnight, a cheer goes up. 1921 has arrived. Prohibition is still the law of the land, but no one seems to care. If anything, the illegal nature of this celebration makes it more exciting. There's a collective thrill in the shared defiance, a sense of being part of something subversive and new. You raise your glass, actually a coffee cup, in a toast with your friends. The jazz band launches into a wilder number. The dance floor becomes a frenzy of movement. A woman you've never met grabs your hand and pulls you into the dance. "Happy New Year, honey," she shouts over the music. "Here's to whatever happens next." What happens next, of course, is the rest of the Roaring Twenties, with all its excesses, innovations, and contradictions. But that's just the beginning of how Americans really spent their free time in this transformative decade. The trumpet player hits a note so high and clear it seems to hang in the air above the crowd. The drummer picks up the pace. On the dance floor, a young woman demonstrates a new step, her feet moving faster than seems possible. Everyone watches, trying to learn. This is how culture spreads in 1920, person to person, night by night, in hidden rooms where the law can't reach. The policeman who regularly patrols this block walks past the door, deliberately looking the other way. He'll collect his payment tomorrow. Everyone knows the system. Everyone plays their part. Your friend leans in, shouting to be heard over the music. They're opening a new place next week. Supposedly they've got girls dancing the Charleston. She raises her eyebrows suggestively. "Want to check it out?" You've spent the whole morning wandering through the streets of Chicago, and now the mid-afternoon sun casts long shadows between the buildings. You pass a department store window and something catches your eye, a display of women's clothing unlike anything you've seen before. Short dresses with straight silhouettes decorated with beads and fringe, no corsets in sight, mannequins with bobbed hair and long strands of pearls. This is the new look sweeping America in 1922, and it's causing quite a stir. An older woman stops beside you, clicking her tongue in disapproval. "Disgraceful," she mutters. "In my day, a lady wouldn't be caught dead showing her knees." You smile politely, but say nothing. Times are changing, and nowhere is this more obvious than in women's fashion. The transformation is so dramatic it's almost hard to believe. Just 10 years ago, women were still wearing ankle-length dresses, corsets that cinched their waists to painful extremes, and elaborate hairstyles that took hours to arrange. Now, the most fashionable young women of 1922 look almost like different creatures entirely. Your curiosity piqued, you decide to step inside the department store. The women's department is buzzing with activity. Shop girls demonstrate the latest styles to customers. A beauty counter offers cosmetics that would have been considered scandalous a decade earlier. Rouge, lipstick, and eye makeup, once associated only with actresses and prostitutes. "Can I help you?" asks a salesgirl with a fashionably bobbed haircut. Her dress is short enough to show her knees when she walks, and she moves with a freedom that would have been impossible in the constrictive clothing of the previous era. "Just looking," you say. "Well, if you know any young ladies," she says with a wink, "tell them we just got in the latest flapper dresses from New York. They're going fast." The word flapper had been around since the 1910s, originally referring to awkward teenage girls, but by 1922 it had taken on an entirely new meaning. Flappers were young women who embraced a lifestyle that shocked traditional sensibilities. They cut their hair short in bobs or shingles. They wore makeup boldly and publicly. They smoked cigarettes, drank illegal alcohol, and used slang that would make their mothers faint. And they danced. Oh, how they danced to the wild new rhythms of jazz. Outside the department store, you pass a newsstand. The headlines discuss women's suffrage, not the national amendment, which passed in 1920, but the ongoing struggle for women to actually use their new political power. Other stories cover prohibition raids, baseball, Babe Ruth is having another spectacular season, and automobile sales reaching new heights. But it's the magazine covers that really catch your eye. They're filled with images of the modern woman, short-haired, short-skirted, and confident. These illustrations by artists like John Held Jr. and Russell Patterson have come to define the look of the era. They're everywhere, on magazine covers, in advertisements, on sheet music. The flapper has become not just a reality, but a symbol, a visual shorthand for the modern age. You buy a copy of the Saturday Evening Post, tucking it under your arm as you continue your walk. The afternoon streets are filled with a mix of people, some embracing the new styles, others clinging to pre-war fashions. America in 1922 is caught between eras, with multiple generations and value systems existing side by side, sometimes in conflict, sometimes in uneasy coexistence. As you turn a corner, you hear music drifting from an open doorway. A sign above reads, "Dance lessons, all the latest steps." Curiosity pulls you inside. The dance studio is a large room with wooden floors and mirrors along one wall. About a dozen young men and women are spread across the floor, watching intently as an instructor demonstrates a series of fast, syncopated steps. No, 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 the instructor says, clapping his hands. The Charleston is all in the knees and ankles. You've got to get that twist. He demonstrates again, his feet twisting inward and outward in a rapid rhythm, knees bouncing, arms swinging. This is the dance that's sweeping the nation in 1922. The Charleston, though it won't reach the peak of its popularity until 1923, when it features in the all-black Broadway show Runnin' Wild. It's already making waves in dance halls across America. "Would you like to join?" asks a young woman near the door. "We've just started a new beginner's class." You hesitate, but curiosity wins out. Soon, you're lined up with the other students, attempting to mimic the instructor's movements. It's harder than it looks. The Charleston requires a level of coordination and energy that's unlike any traditional dance. Your feet are supposed to twist inward at the ankle, then outward, while your knees knock together and apart. Meanwhile, your arms swing in the opposite direction of your legs. The young woman next to you, her name is Dorothy, seems to pick it up naturally. Her short dress allows for freedom of movement that would have been impossible in the fashions of a previous generation. This, you realise, is why women's fashion had to change. The new dances demanded it. "Where did this dance come from?" you ask Dorothy during a break, both of you breathing hard from the exertion. "Well," she says, lowering her voice a bit, "it started with black dancers in Harlem, but now everyone's doing it." She demonstrates a few steps, moving with confident precision. "My parents hate it. They say it's indecent." She laughs. "That's why I love it." The racial dynamics of dance in the 1920s were complex. White Americans were simultaneously fascinated by and anxious about black cultural forms. The Charleston, like jazz itself, originated in black communities. As it crossed over into mainstream white culture, it was often sanitized and commercialized, its origins obscured or denied. Yet its fundamental character, its energy, spontaneity, and sensuality remained revolutionary. After the lesson, Dorothy invites you to join her at a dance hall that evening. They've got a hot jazz band, she says, and they don't water down their drinks too much, if you know what I mean. Hours later, you find yourself in a large, crowded dance hall. It's not a speakeasy. Alcohol is served discreetly, but dancing is the main attraction. A jazz band plays on a raised stage at one end of the room. The dance floor is packed with couples doing the foxtrot, the shimmy, and yes, the Charleston. Dorothy introduces you to her friends, a lively group of young men and women in their early 20s. The women all sport bobbed hair and knee-length dresses. They smoke cigarettes and use slang you're still learning. "That's the cat's meow," one says about the band. "Absolutely, Jake," agrees another. "Don't be a flat tire," Dorothy tells you, pulling you onto the dance floor. "Let's show them what we learned today." The Charleston was just one of many dances that defined the era. The black bottom, even more scandalous with its hip movements and shuffling steps, was gaining popularity. The shimmy, which involved holding the body still while shaking the shoulders back and forth, had been shocking audiences since the late 1910s. The bunny hug, the turkey trot, the grizzly bear, all featured animal-like movements that would have been unthinkable in the formal ballrooms of the previous century. These dances weren't just entertainment, they were expressions of a new physical freedom, especially for women. In the Victorian era, respectable women were expected to be physically restrained, their bodies confined by both clothing and social convention. The new dances of the 1920s celebrated the body in motion, energetic, expressive, and uninhibited. As the evening progresses, you notice something else about this dance hall. While most of the patrons are white, there's a small group of black couples dancing near one side of the room. They're not fully integrated with the white dancers, but their presence in the same space is still remarkable for 1922 America. The shared love of jazz and dancing is creating spaces where the rigid segregation of American life occasionally bends, if not breaks. During a break in the dancing, Dorothy introduces you to her friend, Evelyn, who works as a secretary at an advertising firm. "Can you believe I make enough to have my own apartment?" Evelyn says proudly. "My mother keeps telling me I need to find a husband, but I tell her I'm having too much fun to settle down." This was another aspect of the flapper revolution, economic independence. After World War I, more women entered the workforce than ever before. New jobs in offices, department stores and telephone exchanges offered alternatives to domestic service or factory work. While women were still paid less than men and often expected to leave work after marriage, a young single woman could earn enough to support herself, however modestly. This economic independence fueled social independence. A young woman with her own income could make her own choices about how to dress, where to go, and whom to associate with. The traditional patterns of courtship and marriage began to shift as women claimed more autonomy over their lives and bodies. "My grandmother couldn't even vote," Dorothy tells you as you sit out a dance watching the crowd. "Now we can vote, earn our own money and dance the Charleston. Progress." She raises her drink in a mock toast. But not everyone saw these changes as progress. Newspapers and magazines were filled with dire warnings about the flapper menace and the moral decline of American youth. Religious leaders denounced the new dances as sinful. Schools banned short skirts and bobbed hair. Parents worried that their daughters were being corrupted by modern influences. One article in the Atlantic Monthly in 1920 had described flappers as women who trot like foxes, limp like lame ducks, one step like cripples, and all to the barbaric yawp of strange instruments which transform the whole scene into a moving picture of a fancy ball in Bedlam. Such criticisms had little effect. If anything, they made flapper culture more appealing to young women eager to break with the constraints of the past. The more their elders disapproved, the more enthusiastically they embraced their new freedoms. As midnight approaches, the dance hall shows no signs of slowing down. If anything, the energy has increased. The band plays faster, the dancers move more frenetically. There's a sense of joyful rebellion in the air, a collective defiance of traditional restraints. A new song starts, and Dorothy pulls you back onto the dance floor. "This one's my favourite," she shouts over the music. The Charleston reaches its frenzied peak, 100 pairs of feet moving in syncopated rhythm, kicking and twisting. The band's drummer drives the beat forward, while the trumpet player stands for a solo that sends the crowd into a frenzy. In this moment, you understand why the older generation is so alarmed. This isn't just dancing, it's a cultural revolution happening on the dance floor. These young men and women are literally embodying a new worldview, expressing through movement their rejection of Victorian restraint and their embrace of modern freedom. Their bodies move in ways that would have been unthinkable, even scandalous, just a decade earlier. By 1922, dance halls have become one of America's most important cultural institutions. They're where young people socialize, where new music is popularized, where fashion trends are displayed, and where generational values clash and transform. From small-town dance pavilions to urban ballrooms, these spaces define youth culture in the roaring 20s. The dance ends and everyone applauds. You're breathing hard, exhilarated and exhausted at the same time. Dorothy fans herself with her hand. "Isn't it the berries?" she says, grinning. "My mother would have a fit if she could see me now." For many young women, that was precisely the point. The flapper wasn't just a fashion statement, she was a declaration of independence from the restrictions of the previous generation. By cutting her hair, raising her hemlines, and dancing until dawn, she announced her intention to live life on her own terms. Of course, the reality was more complicated than the image. Most young women of the 1920s weren't full-fledged flappers. They might adopt elements of the style, a bobbed haircut here, a shorter skirt there, while still living largely conventional lives. They might work as shop girls or secretaries during the day, then dance the Charleston on Saturday nights before attending church with their parents on Sunday morning. American society in the 1920s wasn't so much revolutionized as it was fractured, with different generations and communities navigating the cross-currents of tradition and modernity. As the night continues, you observe the varied crowd in the dance hall. There are the true flappers, like Dorothy and her friends, embracing the new ethos wholeheartedly. There are young men in suits with slicked back hair, some from good families slumming for excitement, others working-class guys saving up for a night out. There are older couples trying to keep up with the new dances, and a few disapproving chaperones watching from the sidelines. "You should come to a house party next weekend," Dorothy tells you as you both take a break from dancing. "My friend Mabel's parents are out of town. She's got a Victrola and all the latest records." The home phonograph was another technology transforming American leisure time in the 1920s. Suddenly, you didn't need to go out to a dance hall to hear the latest jazz. You could bring it into your living room, turning any gathering into a dance party. This privatization of entertainment would continue with radio, which was just beginning to enter American homes in 1922. "We're going to teach everyone the black bottom," Dorothy continues. "It's even wilder than the Charleston. You've got to shake everything," she demonstrates with a shimmy of her shoulders and hips that indeed looks quite scandalous. The black bottom would soon rival the Charleston in popularity. Originating among black dancers in the South, it featured slides, stomps, and hip movements that made the Charleston look tame by comparison. When it crossed over into mainstream white culture, it was often sanitized, but still retained enough of its provocative character to shock traditionalists. "My brother says dancing like this is going to be the downfall of civilization," Dorothy says with a laugh. "He's such a killjoy." "What does he think people should do instead?" you ask. "Oh, go to lectures or play chess or something boring like that," she says, rolling her eyes. "He doesn't understand that we just want to have fun. Our generation saw the war. Life's too short to be so serious all the time." This was a common sentiment among the youth of the 1920s. The shadow of World War I loomed large, even for those who hadn't served. The war had shattered illusions about the inevitability of progress and the wisdom of authority. Many young people responded with a determination to live in the moment, to seek pleasure and excitement rather than defer gratification for some uncertain future. The music changes to a slower tempo, and couples crowd the dance floor for a foxtrot. The foxtrot had emerged in the 1910s, but remained popular throughout the 1920s as a slightly more sedate alternative to the wilder jazz dances. Invented by vaudeville performer Harry Fox, it featured smooth, gliding steps that were elegant yet still modern. Dorothy is immediately asked to dance by a young man in a smart suit. She throws you a wink as she disappears into the crowd. Left alone, you watch the dancers and reflect on how radically American social life has transformed in such a short time. The dance hall itself is a new kind of space. Before the 1920s, respectable young women would never have gone out dancing without proper chaperones. Courtship happened in controlled environments. The family parlor, church socials, carefully supervised dances. Now, young women like Dorothy go out freely with friends, meet new people, and make their own decisions about whom to dance with or spend time with. Dating, as a concept, is still relatively new. The word only began to be used in its modern romantic sense around 1920. Before that, dating referred primarily to setting a date on a calendar. The modern practice, where a man asks a woman out, picks her up, takes her somewhere and pays for the evening, was just beginning to replace more formal courtship rituals. The privacy of automobiles was changing courtship too. Parking, finding a secluded spot to neck or pet in a car, was becoming a common activity among young couples. This new privacy allowed for physical intimacy outside of marriage to a degree that would have been much more difficult in previous generations. Not that such intimacy was entirely new. Every generation finds ways to subvert social restrictions, but the scale and openness of the change in the 1920s was unprecedented. Books and articles openly discussed petting and necking. Advice columnists debated how far was too far. The term making out entered the lexicon. As midnight passes, the dance hall shows no signs of closing. If anything, the crowd has grown more animated. The band takes fewer breaks. The dancing becomes more abandoned. In 1922, urban nightlife is just hitting its stride, with many establishments staying open until dawn. Dorothy returns, flushed and happy from dancing. "Come on," she says, grabbing your hand. "They're playing a shimmy next. I'll show you how." The shimmy was perhaps the most controversial of the 1920s dances. It involved standing in place and shaking the shoulders rapidly back and forth, causing other parts of the body to shake as well. Performers like Gilda Gray had popularized it in vaudeville, and by 1922 it had made its way to dance halls across America, despite being banned in many places. "It's easy," Dorothy says, demonstrating. "You just hold your body still and shake your shoulders like this." She demonstrates, her whole body vibrating with the movement, her string of pearls bouncing against her chest. You try to imitate her, feeling slightly ridiculous, but caught up in the infectious energy of the crowd. All around you, people are doing variations of the same movement, some more coordinated than others. The band plays faster, encouraging the frenzy. This is another aspect of 1920s dance culture, its participatory nature. Unlike formal ballroom dancing with its strict rules and required training, jazz dances could be picked up by watching and joining in. They were democratic, accessible to anyone willing to try, regardless of background or formal education. As the night progresses, you notice another cultural shift happening on the dance floor. Couples are dancing closer together than would have been acceptable in previous eras. The foxtrot, while more restrained than the charleston or shimmy, still allows for a closeness that would have scandalized the Victorian generation. Even in this public space, there's a new physical intimacy that reflects changing attitudes toward the body and sexuality. Some older observers blamed these changes on the war, which had sent millions of young American men to Europe, exposing them to different social customs and moral codes. Others pointed to the influence of movies, which showed more permissive behavior than had previously been visible in public discourse. Still others blamed jazz itself, claiming that its rhythms encouraged immoral thoughts and actions. Whatever the cause, the effect was undeniable. American youth culture in 1922 was breaking with the past in dramatic and visible ways, and nowhere was this more evident than on the dance floor. Around 2 a.m. the band announces their final number. The dance hall has thinned out somewhat, but a core group of enthusiasts remains, determined to squeeze every last moment of enjoyment from the night. "One more Charleston," Dorothy exclaims, pulling you back onto the dance floor for a final frenetic dance. The band plays at a breakneck tempo. The dancers respond with ever more energetic movements. This is the spirit of the jazz age distilled to its essence. Fast, exciting, liberated, and unstoppable. As the music builds to its climax, you look around at the bobbed hair, the short skirts, the flushed faces and sparkling eyes. This, you realize, is a moment of genuine cultural transformation happening right before your eyes. These young men and women aren't just dancing. They're defining a new era, step by step, beat by beat. The song ends with a dramatic flourish. Everyone applauds wildly, shouting and whistling their appreciation. The band takes a bow. The dance hall lights come up slightly, signaling that the night is truly over. "Wasn't that just the cat's pajamas?" Dorothy says, fanning herself with her hand. She's barely out of breath despite dancing for hours. "Say, a bunch of us are going to get some coffee at an all-night diner. Want to join?" This too is new. Young people, especially young women, out at all hours, moving freely through the city, making their own decisions about how to spend their time and whom to spend it with. The night isn't ending, it's just moving to a new venue. "There's another dance tomorrow at the Arcadia Ballroom," Dorothy continues as you gather your things. "They've got a contest for the best Charleston. First prize is $50. My friend Mabel and I are entering. You should come watch." Dance contests were becoming a popular entertainment in their own right. Some, like dance marathons, would test physical endurance, with couples dancing for days on end. Others showcased skill and style, helping to spread new dance crazes across the country. Outside, the night air is cool and refreshing after the heat of the dance hall. A few automobiles idle at the curb, waiting for dancers. Others walk in groups towards streetcar stops or nearby diners. The city at night is alive with young people, their energy undiminished despite the late hour. As you walk with Dorothy and her friends toward an all-night diner, someone starts humming the Charleston tune. Soon, everyone is doing the dance steps right there on the sidewalk, laughing and showing off. A policeman watching from the corner just shakes his head. This is 1922. The old rules are changing, and even the authorities are beginning to accept that they can't stop the tide. The next day dawns bright and clear. After sleeping late to recover from your night of dancing, you decide to explore another aspect of 1920s American leisure, the booming world of spectator sports. You've been hearing excited conversations about today's baseball game between the Chicago White Sox and the New York Yankees. Apparently, the Yankees' new star, Babe Ruth, is coming to town. It's a warm afternoon in 1922 as you approach Comiskey Park. The atmosphere is electric, with thousands of fans streaming toward the stadium. Men in suits and straw boater hats, women in fashionable dresses, children skipping alongside their parents. Baseball has become America's true national pastime, drawing crowds from every walk of life. You buy a ticket for 50 cents and find your seat in the grandstand. The wooden bench is hard and a bit uncomfortable, but you hardly notice as you take in the scene. The emerald green field stretches out below, groundskeepers making final preparations. Vendors move through the stands, selling peanuts, popcorn, and bottles of Coca-Cola. Unlike the speakeasies and dance halls, this is a family-friendly environment, though you notice some men discreetly passing pocket flasks. "First time?" asks the man next to you, a middle-aged fellow in a business suit who's keeping score in a small notebook. You nod. You picked a good one. The Babe's been on a tear this season. George Herman Babe Ruth had transformed baseball in just a few short years. After starting his career as a pitcher with the Boston Red Sox, he was sold to the Yankees in 1920 and converted to an outfielder so he could play every day. His power-hitting approach revolutionized the game. Before Ruth, baseball was a strategic affair focused on small ball, bunts, stolen bases, and singles. Ruth introduced the home run as baseball's most exciting play. Last year he hit 59 homers, your neighbor explains proudly. Nobody had ever hit more than 27 before. He's completely changed the game. The players take the field for warm-ups, and a murmur runs through the crowd as a stocky figure with surprisingly thin legs emerges from the visitors' dugout. Even from a distance, there's no mistaking Babe Ruth. His distinctive waddle-like walk, his oversized uniform that makes him look somewhat like an overgrown child, and the casual confidence with which he carries himself, all instantly recognizable even to a first-time spectator. "There he is," shouts a young boy a few rows ahead, jumping up and pointing. "The Bambino," Ruth seems to hear, turning to the stands with a grin and a wave that sends the crowd into a frenzy. This is more than just athletic admiration. It's the worship of a new kind of American hero. Ruth isn't just a great baseball player. He's a celebrity, a personality, a cultural phenomenon. Unlike the restrained, gentlemanly athletes of previous eras, Ruth is boisterous, indulgent, and larger than life. Stories of his appetites for food, alcohol, and women are as much a part of his legend as his home runs. He's known to eat a dozen hot dogs before a game, to carouse all night and then hit 2 homers the next day. He's the perfect sports hero for the Roaring Twenties, excessive, extraordinary, and unapologetic. The game begins, and you're surprised by how engaging it is, even for a newcomer. The rhythm of baseball is accessible. The pitch, the swing, the crack of the bat, the dash around the bases. The crowd reacts as one organism, gasping, cheering, and groaning in unison. When Ruth comes to bat in the 3rd inning, the stadium falls into an expectant hush. He adjusts his cap, taps his bat on the plate, and points toward the outfield, a gesture that some interpret as him calling his shot, predicting where he'll hit the ball. The pitcher winds up and delivers. Ruth's swing is a thing of beauty, powerful yet graceful, with perfect timing. The crack of the bat echoes through the stadium as the ball soars high and deep. The crowd rises as one, following its arc as it clears the right field fence by a good 30 feet. Home run. The stadium erupts. Ruth circles the bases with his characteristic trot, tipping his cap as he crosses home plate. Children scream with delight. Men pound each other on the back. Women wave handkerchiefs. This is sports as pure spectacle as shared cultural experience. "That's 31 this season," exclaims your neighbour, marking it carefully in his scorebook. He's on pace to break his own record. Baseball's popularity in the 1920s cannot be overstated. With increased urban populations, improved transportation, and more leisure time, attendance at major league games nearly doubled during the decade. New stadiums were built across the country, larger, more comfortable venues that reflected baseball's growing cultural importance. But baseball wasn't the only sport captivating Americans. As the afternoon game stretches on, the Yankees eventually winning 6-3, with Ruth hitting another homer in the 8th inning, talk in the stands turns to the upcoming boxing match between Jack Dempsey and Tommy Gibbons, scheduled for the following summer. "Dempsey's unbeatable," insists a man behind you. "Knocked out Carpentier in the 4th round last year. 70,000 people saw it." "Gibbons has a chance," argues his companion. "He's quick, could outbox him." Boxing in the 1920s rivaled baseball for public attention. Championship fights were major events, drawing crowds that dwarfed any previous sporting contests. The 1921 match between Dempsey and Georges Carpentier, held in a specially constructed arena in Jersey City, was the first sporting event to generate $1 million gate and the first to be broadcast on radio. Like Ruth, Jack Dempsey was a sports icon who transcended his sport. Known as the Manasseh Mauler, his aggressive, relentless fighting style made him a perfect symbol of the dynamic, sometimes violent energy of the decade. His fights were spectacles of barely controlled brutality that both horrified and fascinated the public. As you leave the baseball stadium with the satisfied crowd, the late afternoon sun still warm on your face, you noticed newspaper boys hawking the evening edition. Read all about it. Ruth does it again. 2 homers against Sox. The speed with which sports news travelled was another feature of this new media age. Radio broadcasts were just beginning to bring games to remote listeners. Newspapers published multiple editions to keep up with sporting results. America was becoming a nation united by shared experiences, even if those experiences were enjoyed vicariously through media. Your day of sports spectatorship has left you exhilarated but also hungry for a different kind of entertainment. Checking your watch, you realise there's time to catch an evening movie. The theatre district is just a short streetcar ride away. By 1922, movies had completed their transformation from novelty to major art form. Grand movie palaces were being built in cities across America, opulent theatres with ornate facades, plush seating, and extravagant lobbies that made going to the movies an event in itself. You disembark at a busy intersection dominated by a dazzling marquee. Electric lights spell out State Theatre above a display promoting Grandma's Boy starring Harold Lloyd. The poster shows the bespectacled comedian in a characteristic pose of comical distress. This is one of the year's most anticipated comedies, directed by Fred Neumeier and featuring Lloyd's trademark blend of humour and death-defying stunts. The theatre lobby is a marvel of exotic architecture, a fantasy space of marble columns, crystal chandeliers and plush red carpets. Uniformed ushers direct patrons to their seats. An organist plays at a massive Wurlitzer theatre organ, providing musical accompaniment even before the film begins. The organ's pipes are visible along the theatre walls, adding to the visual spectacle. You purchase a ticket for 25 cents and find a seat in the middle of the auditorium. The theatre is nearly full despite it being a weekday evening. Movie-going has become a regular habit for millions of Americans across all social classes. Unlike legitimate theatre, which remained relatively expensive and exclusive, cinema was affordable entertainment for the masses. As the lights dim, the audience settles into an expectant hush. Remember, these are silent films. There's no synchronized sound yet, though that revolution is only a few years away. The organist transitions to a more dramatic piece as the studio logo appears on screen. First comes a newsreel. Pathé News presents recent events from around the world. You see footage of President Harding dedicating a monument, famine relief efforts in Russia, and a society wedding in Newport. This is how many Americans experience the wider world, through these visual dispatches that bring distant events into local theatres. Next is an animated short, a Felix the Cat cartoon. The mischievous feline gets into a series of increasingly absurd predicaments, each resolved through impossible physical transformations that only animation can achieve. The audience laughs appreciatively. Animation is still a relatively new art form, and its freedoms from physical constraints delight viewers accustomed to the limitations of reality. Finally, the main feature begins. Grandma's Boy tells the story of a cowardly young man who gains courage after his grandmother gives him a talisman that supposedly belonged to his brave grandfather. The humour builds from Lloyd's physical comedy, his expressive face magnified on the giant screen, his body performing astonishing stunts that blur the line between comedy and danger. Lloyd, along with Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton, formed the triumvirate of great silent comedians. Each had a distinctive screen persona: Chaplin the wistful tramp, Keaton the stone-faced stoic, and Lloyd the glasses-wearing everyman, whose ordinary appearance belied his extraordinary physical abilities. What strikes you most about the movie experience is its communal nature. Laughter ripples through the audience at Lloyd's antics. People gasp together during dangerous sequences. Without dialogue to follow, viewers are free to react audibly, creating a shared emotional experience that's quite different from modern movie-going. The organist follows the action with appropriate musical accompaniment, jaunty tunes for comic scenes, dramatic chords for suspense, romantic melodies for the inevitable love story. The relationship between music and image is crucial to the silent film experience, establishing emotional tones and rhythms that guide the audience's response. After the movie ends to enthusiastic applause, you exit the theatre into the early evening. The marquee lights seem even more brilliant against the darkening sky. Other theatres line the street, each showcasing different films, dramas, westerns, romances. Cinema has diversified to serve every taste and interest. "Wasn't he marvellous?" says a young woman to her companion as they exit behind you. "I read in Photoplay that he does all his own stunts. Nearly killed himself making safety last." Fan magazines like Photoplay were creating a new kind of celebrity culture. They offered behind-the-scenes glimpses of movie productions, interviews with stars, and gossip about their personal lives. Movie stars like Lloyd, Chaplin, Mary Pickford, Douglas Fairbanks, and Rudolph Valentino became household names, their faces recognized across America, their lifestyles both envied and scrutinized. The streets are still busy as night falls. The urban landscape has been transformed by electric lighting, creating new spaces for nighttime entertainment and commerce. Restaurants, theatres and shops remain open into the evening, their windows casting warm rectangles of light onto the sidewalks. The American night has been colonized by leisure activities that were once confined to daylight hours. You decide to stop for dinner at a nearby automat, another innovation of the era. The Horn and Hardart Automat is a cafeteria-style restaurant where food is served by coin-operated vending machines with glass doors. You insert nickels, turn a knob, and retrieve your selection. Perhaps a sandwich, a slice of pie, or a cup of coffee. It's dining mechanized for the modern age, enabling quick, affordable meals for busy urbanites. As you eat, you overhear conversations at nearby tables. A group of office workers discusses the latest episode of Amos and Andy, a popular radio show. Though radio broadcasting is still in its infancy in 1922, it's already changing how Americans spend their leisure hours. By the end of the decade, radio would become the first truly national mass medium, bringing entertainment, news, and advertising directly into American homes. "We got a crystal set last month," one man explains proudly. "Reception's not great, but when it's clear, you can hear stations from 3 states away." Early radio receivers required patience and technical skill. Crystal sets, the simplest and cheapest receivers, used a small piece of crystalline mineral and a thin wire known as a cat's whisker to detect radio signals. They required no external power but needed careful adjustment and headphones to hear the weak signals. More expensive vacuum tube radios offered better reception and could power loudspeakers, allowing entire families to listen together. The programming in 1922 is still rudimentary. Music performances, news readings, occasional sports broadcasts, but the foundation is being laid for what will become known as radio's golden age, a period when radio serials, comedy shows and dramas would gather families around the receiver each evening, creating shared national experiences. After finishing your meal, you decide to explore the city's evening offerings further. The night is still young and 1920s urban America offers endless entertainment options. You pass newsstands selling the latest magazines and newspapers. Time magazine won't launch until the following year, but there's already a bewildering array of publications catering to every interest, from highbrow literary journals to pulp fiction magazines with lurid covers. One magazine catches your eye, the Saturday Evening Post, with a Norman Rockwell illustration on the cover. Rockwell's idealized depictions of American life are becoming cultural touchstones, simultaneously documenting and mythologizing everyday experiences. Through his art and that of other illustrators, Americans see reflections of themselves, sometimes accurate, sometimes aspirational, but always compelling. You continue your walk, passing a bookstore still open for evening browsers. In the window display are copies of the year's bestsellers: Sinclair Lewis's Babbitt, F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Beautiful and Damned, and Agatha Christie's The Secret Adversary. Literature in the 1920s is as dynamic and diverse as every other cultural form, with modernist experimentation existing alongside traditional narratives and popular genre fiction. Nearby, a crowd has gathered outside a brightly lit storefront. Peering through the window, you see people clustered around a demonstration model of the latest technological marvel, the radio. An attendant adjusts the dials as the audience listens in wonder to voices and music transmitted invisibly through the air. For many, this is their first encounter with radio technology, and their expressions mix confusion and delight. "It's picking up KDKA from Pittsburgh," explains the attendant, first commercial radio station in the country. KDKA had indeed pioneered commercial broadcasting, going on air in 1920 with coverage of the Harding-Cox presidential election results. By 1922, radio stations are proliferating across the country, though the regulatory framework governing the airwaves is still developing. The Radio Act of 1927 will eventually bring order to the chaotic growth of broadcasting, establishing the Federal Radio Commission, predecessor to the FCC, and creating a more structured allocation of the radio spectrum. As you continue your evening stroll, you notice another crowd gathered outside a different kind of establishment, a brightly lit storefront with large windows through which you can see rows of telephones. This is a public telephone centre where people can make long-distance calls without having to install costly telephone service in their homes. Like radio, telephone technology is expanding American connections, shrinking distances, and creating new forms of social interaction. The day has provided a whirlwind tour of American entertainment in 1922, from the mass spectacle of baseball to the communal experience of cinema to the emerging world of broadcasting. Each represents a different aspect of the leisure revolution transforming American life. Americans now have more free time than previous generations, more disposable income to spend on entertainment, and more options for how to spend both. As evening deepens into night, you find yourself drawn toward another movie palace, this one even grander than the first. The marquee announces a special presentation of Nosferatu, the German expressionist horror film directed by F.W. Murnau. This unofficial adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula has just reached American shores, bringing with it the artistic innovations of European cinema. The theatre interior is a gothic fantasy of arched ceilings, twisted columns, and dramatic lighting, perfectly suited to the vampire tale about to unfold on screen. The audience here is different from the family crowd at the Harold Lloyd comedy. More sophisticated urbanites, art students, and immigrants from European backgrounds who appreciate the film's aesthetic roots. As you settle into your seat, the lights dim and the organ begins a haunting melody. The film begins with stylized title cards in elaborate Gothic script. Then comes the first appearance of Count Orlok, the thinly disguised Dracula character, played by Max Schreck. His unnaturally tall, thin silhouette, rat-like features, and elongated fingers create an image of otherworldly menace unlike anything in American cinema. The film uses shadow and light to create a mood of dread and supernatural threat. Innovative camera techniques, unusual angles, distorted perspectives, and creative use of negative space contribute to the unsettling atmosphere. This is cinema as art, pushing the boundaries of the medium beyond simple entertainment. What's striking about the audience's reaction is how sophisticated they've become as film viewers in the relatively short history of cinema. They understand the visual language of film, how a close-up signifies emotional intensity, how cross-cutting between scenes creates suspense, how lighting shapes mood. In just 2 decades, audiences have developed a visual literacy that allows filmmakers to tell increasingly complex stories. Foreign films like Nosferatu represent just one branch of cinema's rapid evolution. American studios are producing their own artistic achievements while also developing the star system and genre conventions that will define Hollywood's golden age. Directors like D.W. Griffith, Cecil B. DeMille, and Erich von Stroheim are establishing film as a director's medium, bringing personal vision and technical innovation to their productions. As Count Orlok meets his fate in the film's climax, dissolving in the rays of the morning sun, you reflect on how movies have expanded the boundaries of human experience. They allow audiences to visit distant lands, witness historical events, and enter fantastical realms impossible in reality. Cinema is becoming the great shared dream of modern society, a collective unconscious expressed through light and shadow. After the film ends, you join the crowd flowing back onto the street. The night has grown later, but the city still pulses with activity. From a nearby dance hall comes the sound of jazz. Automobiles cruise the streets, their headlights sweeping across building facades. Late editions of newspapers are still being hawked by persistent newsboys. You decide to make one more stop before calling it a night. A small crowd has gathered outside a radio store where a loudspeaker has been set up in the window, broadcasting a live musical performance. People stand on the sidewalk listening to this disembodied entertainment. Music without musicians, voices without bodies. It's a small glimpse of how radio will transform American leisure, bringing entertainment directly into homes rather than requiring people to seek it out in public venues. The broadcast is a dance orchestra playing from a hotel ballroom across town. The sound quality is poor by modern standards, tinny and frequently interrupted by static, but the listeners are enthralled nonetheless. For them, this is technological magic, sound travelling invisibly through the air to materialise from this wooden box with its brass horn. An older man standing nearby shakes his head in wonder. When I was a boy, he says to no one in particular, the most exciting thing was a magic lantern show at the church. Now look at what we've got. Movies that look like real life, voices coming out of thin air. What will they think of next? It's a question that captures the accelerating pace of change in 1920s America. Each year brings new technologies, new forms of entertainment, new ways of connecting people across distance. The boundaries between public and private life are shifting. Mass media is creating shared national experiences that transcend regional differences. Celebrity culture is establishing new kinds of social hierarchies based on visibility and charisma rather than wealth or birth. As you finally turn toward home, your mind is filled with the day's experiences. The crack of Babe Ruth's bat, Harold Lloyd's comic misadventures, Count Orlok's sinister shadow, the disembodied voices from the radio. Each represents a different facet of America's entertainment revolution, a different way that leisure time is being reimagined and repurposed in this dynamic decade. The sports stadium, the movie palace, and the radio set are more than just venues for entertainment. They're spaces where Americans of different backgrounds come together to share experiences, where new social norms are negotiated, where the boundaries between high and low culture blur and shift. They're laboratories for modernity itself, testing grounds for what American society might become. Tomorrow, you think, as you walk through the now quieter streets, you might explore some of the decade's stranger fads, the flagpole sitting, the dance marathons, the crossword puzzle competitions, or perhaps you'll investigate the automobile culture that's reshaping American geography and social life. The possibilities seem endless in this moment of cultural ferment, this jazz-soundtracked, celluloid-projected, radio broadcast revolution in how Americans spend their free time. For now, though, you're content with the day's adventures, your personal tour through the entertainment landscape of 1922. The night around you still hums with the energy of a society discovering new pleasures, new pastimes, and new possibilities for how to live. Above the city lights, stars are barely visible, outshone, perhaps temporarily, by humanity's own brilliant inventions. The evening sky has deepened to indigo as you stroll through the streets of Chicago. The day's baseball game and movie excursions have left you pleasantly tired, yet still curious about what other entertainments the Roaring Twenties might offer. Passing a newsstand, you notice a peculiar headline: "Man sits atop flagpole for 13th hour." Intrigued, you purchase the paper and read about a curious new phenomenon sweeping America. Aloysius "Shipwreck" Kelly, the article explains, continues his death-defying feat of endurance perched atop a flagpole in downtown Los Angeles. It's 1924 now, and America has developed an insatiable appetite for bizarre endurance stunts. The flagpole sitting craze is just beginning, a fad that will define the stranger side of 1920s leisure activities. According to the newspaper, this peculiar pastime began when a friend dared former sailor and Hollywood stuntman Alvin "Shipwreck" Kelly to sit atop a flagpole. Kelly, who earned his nickname from being shipwrecked multiple times, or perhaps from being knocked out so often as a boxer that fans yelled he'd been shipwrecked again, accepted the challenge. The newspaper reports that crowds have gathered below the pole, watching in fascination as Kelly maintains his precarious perch. Police have been called to control the growing throng of spectators. Theatre owners and businesses have already begun reaching out to Kelly, offering payment if he'll perform similar stunts to draw attention to their establishments. You fold the newspaper, smiling at the oddity of it all. The 1920s, it seems, is an era not only of speakeasies, flappers and baseball heroes, but also of increasingly peculiar pastimes. People are seeking entertainment in the unusual, the extreme, the limits of human endurance. As if confirming your thoughts, you turn a corner and see a large banner stretched across a building entrance. Dance Marathon, Day 3, contestants still going. Curious, you pay the 25-cent admission and step inside. The large dance hall is dim and hazy with cigarette smoke. The air feels close and warm, thick with the mingled scents of perfume, sweat, and exhaustion. A crowd of spectators rings the dance floor where about a dozen couples shuffle slowly in what barely qualifies as dancing. Most appear to be in a state of near collapse, supporting each other as they move just enough to avoid disqualification. "How long have they been at it?" you ask a man standing near the entrance. 72 hours straight, he replies, consulting his pocket watch. "Started Saturday at 8. Rules say they get a 15-minute break every hour and they can eat while dancing. Otherwise they got to keep moving." Dance marathons emerged in the early 1920s as part of America's fascination with endurance contests. The first major one was sparked by 32-year-old dance instructor Alma Cummings, who danced continuously for 27 hours in 1923, wearing out 6 male partners in the process. Her feat generated nationwide publicity, and within weeks, others were attempting to break her record. By 1924, dance marathons have evolved from simple record-breaking attempts into elaborate spectacles of endurance. Professional promoters organize these events, charging spectators admission and offering cash prizes to the last couples standing. As the Great Depression approaches, these contests will take on a darker character. Desperate people dancing for days or even weeks for the promise of food, shelter, and the possibility of prize money. For now, though, they're primarily entertainment, testing the limits of human stamina for an audience eager to witness extraordinary feats. You make your way through the crowd to get a better view of the dancers. Most are young, in their 20s, though a few appear older. Their clothing, once fresh and fashionable, is now wrinkled and sweat-stained. Some of the women have abandoned their high heels, dancing in stockinged feet. Men have removed their jackets and ties with shirts unbuttoned at the collar. A man with a megaphone paces the edge of the dance floor. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announces, "we're about to begin our hourly sprint. Contestants, prepare yourselves." The shuffling couples look up with expressions of dread. An orchestra, which had been playing languid waltzes, suddenly strikes up a frantic Charleston tune. The announcer blows a whistle, and the exhausted dancers are forced to increase their pace dramatically, performing energetic steps for the entertainment of the crowd. Some rise to the challenge, finding reserves of energy to kick and twist. Others stumble, barely maintaining their footing. The audience cheats and claps, shouting encouragement to their favourites. This is the paradox of the dance marathon. It combines genuine endurance with theatrical spectacle, real suffering with staged entertainment. After 10 grueling minutes, the whistle blows again and the music returns to a slower tempo. The dancers slump visibly, returning to their minimal shuffling. 2 judges patrol the floor, watching carefully to ensure no one stops moving. "We started with 30 couples on Saturday," explains a woman next to you. "Down to 11 now. My sister's been out here for 2 days to watch her boyfriend. He's the tall fellow in the blue shirt." She points to a lanky young man whose head keeps dropping forward as if he's falling asleep on his feet. His partner, a small blonde woman, appears to be supporting most of his weight. "What's the prize?" you ask. $500 to the last couple standing, she says, plus a silver loving cup. $500 in 1924 is a substantial sum, equivalent to several months' wages for the average worker. It's enough to explain why these young people are pushing themselves beyond normal endurance, risking their health for the chance at such a windfall. As you watch, a loud buzzer sounds, and the announcer calls out, "Break time, contestants, you have 15 minutes. The dancers immediately separate, many collapsing onto cots arranged around the perimeter of the dance floor. Trainers rush in with water, food, and rudimentary medical attention. They massage cramped legs, bandage blistered feet, and offer encouragement. The scene resembles a boxing match between rounds, with each contestant's support team working frantically during the brief respite. "They're not allowed to lie down completely," someone explains. "Rules say they can only sit on the cots. If they lie down or fall asleep, they're disqualified. You stay to watch as the 15 minutes tick away. Some contestants wolf down sandwiches or soup. Others simply sit with vacant expressions, too exhausted even to eat. A team of doctors moves among them, checking pulses and examining feet for serious injuries. All too soon, the buzzer sounds again. Back to the floor, the announcer calls. Groaning, the dancers rise and return to their partners. The music begins and the macabre dance continues. Fascinated but somewhat disturbed by the spectacle, you decide to move on. Outside, the evening has fully given way to night. The streets are quieter now, though still lively compared to smaller towns. This is Chicago in the mid-1920s, a city that never fully sleeps, especially since Prohibition drove entertainment underground and after hours. As you walk, you pass a storefront with an intriguing display in the window, ornately carved tiles arranged in patterns alongside elegant wooden racks and counters. A sign announces Max Games, mahjong sets just arrived from China. Learn the game that's sweeping America. Mahjong, you've heard, is the latest sensation in home entertainment. Originally from China, the game was standardized and exported to America by entrepreneur Joseph P. Babcock in 1922. Within just 2 years, it has become a nationwide craze, particularly popular at ladies' social gatherings. Department stores report that they can barely keep the sets in stock. The window display shows various mahjong sets at different price points, from simple utilitarian versions to elaborate sets with hand-carved ivory tiles in rosewood cases. Books explaining the rules stand nearby, with titles like The Red Book of Mahjong and Mahjong for Beginners. What makes the mahjong phenomenon especially interesting is how it has inspired an entire aesthetic. Women host Chinese-themed mahjong parties, decorating their homes with paper lanterns and serving oriental refreshments. Some even wear Chinese-inspired robes or jackets while playing. It's a form of cultural appropriation driven by America's fascination with the exotic, though few players develop any real understanding of Chinese culture beyond these superficial elements. The store is closed at this hour, but you make a mental note to return another day. Home entertainment is evolving rapidly in the 1920s. While families once gathered primarily for conversation or simple card games, they now have an expanding array of options. Board games, radio programs, phonograph records, and even early versions of electronic games. Continuing your walk, you pass another interesting storefront, this one with a darkened interior, but a prominent sign featuring a mysterious-looking board covered with letters and numbers. Genuine Ouija boards communicate with the beyond, reads the text beneath it. The Ouija board craze, which began in the late 19th century, gained renewed popularity after World War I. The devastating conflict which claimed millions of lives left many families desperate to contact lost loved ones. Spiritualism, the belief that the dead can communicate with the living, experienced a revival, and Ouija boards became its most accessible tool. By the mid-1920s, Ouija boards are a standard feature at parties and social gatherings. Some use them merely as entertainment, a spooky game for evenings with friends. Others take them more seriously, believing they offer genuine connections to the spirit world. Either way, they represent another facet of Americans' evolving leisure activities, a blend of supernatural curiosity and social interaction. As you turn onto a busier street, you encounter a group of young men in raccoon coats, the distinctive full-length fur coats that have become the uniform of male college students across America. They're loud and boisterous, clearly enjoying a night on the town away from campus. "I'm telling you," one says to his companions. Jenkins swallowed 3 goldfish. 3. Won $5 from the Phi Delt boys. Goldfish swallowing is yet another bizarre collegiate fad beginning to emerge, though it won't reach its peak until later in the decade. College campuses have become incubators for peculiar trends and challenges: flagpole sitting, marathon dancing, goldfish swallowing, and seeing how many students can squeeze into a phone booth or automobile. These college trends reflect the growing youth culture of the 1920s, with more young people attending universities than ever before, and with traditions of strict academic discipline relaxing after the war. Students create their own subcultures marked by shared rituals and outlandish behaviors. The raccoon coat, expensive and impractical, serves as a status symbol, marking its wearer as part of this privileged collegiate world. The young men pass by, still debating the authenticity of the goldfish-swallowing feat. You continue your evening exploration, fascinated by these glimpses into different facets of 1920s leisure culture. A few blocks later, you're drawn to a well-lit building with a sign identifying it as a coffee house. Unlike the speakeasies with their secretive entrances and passwords, this establishment openly welcomes patrons. Through the large windows, you can see tables filled with people engaged in animated conversation. Inside, the atmosphere is intellectual and artistic. Men and women in bohemian attire, less flashy than flapper fashion, more intentionally unconventional, sit at small tables. Many are smoking, their cigarettes creating a blue haze near the ceiling. Instead of jazz, a phonograph plays classical music at low volume, allowing for conversation. You find an empty table and order coffee from a waitress. At nearby tables, you overhear discussions of literature, politics, and philosophy. Someone mentions F. Scott Fitzgerald's latest novel. Another group debates the merits of cubism versus expressionism. The table directly beside yours is occupied by 4 people, intensely focused on what appears to be a word puzzle. Graph paper is spread between them, covered with letters arranged in intersecting patterns. 7-letter word for preposterous, says one woman, tapping her pencil against her cheek. 3rd letter is S. Absurd, suggests her companion. No, that's 6 letters. Oh, asinine. Perfect. The woman pencils in the word, connecting it with several others already on the grid. They're working on a crossword puzzle, another new phenomenon of the 1920s. Though word puzzles have existed for centuries, the crossword in its modern form was invented by journalist Arthur Wynne and first published in the New York World newspaper in 1913. By the mid-1920s, crosswords have become a national obsession. Books of crossword puzzles are bestsellers. Libraries report that dictionaries are constantly in use by puzzle solvers. Trains and streetcars are filled with people penciling in answers during their commutes. The first crossword puzzle tournament is still a year away. It will be held at Columbia University in 1925, but informal competitions like the one at the next table are becoming common. Crosswords represent yet another evolution in how Americans spend their leisure time. A solitary activity that can be social, an intellectual challenge that's also entertainment. As you sip your coffee, you notice something else about the conversations around you, the distinctive slang of the era. Young people in the 1920s have developed their own vocabulary, much of it derived from jazz culture and prohibition. That movie was The Cat's Pajamas, says someone at a distant table. Absolutely, Jake, agrees their companion. Don't be such an owl, says a young man to his friend who's checking his watch. The night's still young. This evolving slang, with terms like bee's knees, cat's meow, juice joint, hooch, drugstore cowboy, and banks closed, meaning no more kissing, creates a generational marker, a way for young people to distinguish themselves linguistically from their elders. Like fashion and dance, language becomes another arena for expressing the decade's spirit of rebellion and innovation. You finish your coffee and decide to continue your exploration. Outside, the night has grown later, but the city still offers diversions for those seeking them. Walking down a residential street, you notice a warm glow from the windows of many homes. In some, you catch glimpses of families gathered around radios, still a novelty in many households, though rapidly becoming essential. In other windows, you see people playing board games or card games at dining tables. The 1920s is witnessing a renaissance of home entertainment. Companies like Parker Brothers and Milton Bradley are producing games designed for family play. Monopoly hasn't been invented yet, but games like Sorry, Chinese checkers, and improved versions of older games like chess, checkers, and backgammon are bringing families together around the table. Rounding a corner, you suddenly hear excited shouts and see a crowd gathered in an empty lot between buildings. Curious, you approach and find another endurance contest underway. This one, a walkathon, similar to a dance marathon, but focused simply on continuous walking rather than dancing. Contestants circle a marked path, monitored by judges who ensure they maintain the required pace. Like the dance marathon, participants are permitted brief rest periods but must otherwise remain in constant motion. Some have clearly been at it for days, moving with the shuffling gait of the profoundly exhausted. "Who's leading?" asks a newcomer to the crowd. "That couple there, the tall fellow and the blonde, they've been going for 96 hours straight," replies a spectator, pointing to a pair who somehow maintain a relatively steady pace despite their obvious fatigue. Walkathons, dance marathons, flagpole sitting. These endurance contests reveal something profound about American culture in the 1920s, in an era increasingly defined by speed and efficiency, by machines that eliminate human labor. These activities celebrate the opposite. The capacity of human beings to persist, to endure, to continue beyond normal limits. There's something almost defiant about these contests, as if participants are asserting their humanity in the face of mechanization. They can't compete with automobiles for speed or with assembly lines for efficiency, but they can demonstrate qualities machines don't possess. Willpower, determination, the ability to suffer and continue. As you watch the walkathon contestants making their endless circuits, you're reminded of the flagpole sitters perched precariously above the streets for days or weeks, the dance marathon participants shuffling across the floor in a state between wakefulness and sleep. College students swallowing live goldfish or cramming themselves into phone booths, all pushing against normal boundaries, seeking extraordinary experiences in an age that increasingly threatens to make human experience ordinary. The spectators around you cheer as one particularly exhausted couple completes another lap. Their faces show a complex mixture of empathy and excitement. They feel for these contestants even as they enjoy the spectacle of their suffering. It's a paradox at the heart of these endurance contests. They simultaneously celebrate and exploit human vulnerability. Moving on from the walkathon, you pass a large building with light spilling from its windows and the sounds of recitation coming from within. A sign identifies it as a meeting hall, and smaller notices advertise "Tonight, Webster County Crossword Puzzle Championship, Public Welcome." Stepping inside, you find rows of chairs facing a stage. About half the seats are filled with spectators watching as contestants on stage race to complete giant crossword puzzles displayed on easels. A timekeeper with a stopwatch stands to one side, while judges move among the contestants, verifying answers. "Ladies and gentlemen," announces a man at a podium, "Miss Adelaide Jenkins has completed her puzzle in 7 minutes and 22 seconds, setting a new county record." The audience applauds as a young woman with bobbed hair and spectacles takes a small bow. She looks pleased, but not particularly excited. This is clearly a serious intellectual competition rather than mere entertainment. Crossword tournaments represent yet another variation on American leisure in the 1920s, competitive mental agility. While physical endurance contests push bodies to their limits, these events challenge minds. Both reflect the decade's fascination with extremes, with record setting, with pushing beyond established boundaries. Outside again, the night has grown quite late. Most establishments are closed now, though the occasional speakeasy still glows faintly behind curtained windows. Even a city like Chicago eventually quiets, if never completely. As you walk toward your lodging, you reflect on the day's observations. From baseball stadiums to movie palaces to dance marathons to crossword tournaments, you've witnessed the incredible diversity of 1920s leisure activities. Americans in this dynamic decade are finding new ways to spend their free time, new forms of entertainment, new means of connecting with others or testing their own limits. Some of these activities, like baseball and cinema, will endure, becoming permanent fixtures of American culture. Others, like flagpole sitting and dance marathons, will fade away, remembered as peculiar fads of a particular moment. All of them, however, reveal something about the spirit of the age, its energy, its fascination with extremes, its blend of technological innovation and physical endurance. Passing one final newsstand, you notice a special late edition with a headline announcing "Shipwreck Kelly still atop flagpole, hour 24 approaches." The peculiar saga continues, capturing public imagination with its sheer absurdity and daring. In the years to come, Kelly and his imitators will push flagpole sitting to ever more extreme durations. Kelly himself will eventually claim a record of 49 days atop a flagpole in Atlantic City in 1930. Others will attempt similar feats, sitting on poles through rainstorms and heat waves during daylight and darkness, becoming temporary celebrities through sheer persistence. In a decade defined by excess, from the flowing illegal liquor of speakeasies to the wild dancing of flappers to the home-run heroics of Babe Ruth, these endurance stunts represent perhaps the strangest excess of all, the willingness to transform ordinary human activities like sitting, walking, or dancing into extraordinary spectacles through their extension in time. As you reach your lodging and prepare for sleep, your mind still buzzes with images from the day. The flagpole sitter perched precariously against the sky, exhausted couples shuffling across a dance floor, college boys in raccoon coats debating goldfish swallowing techniques, concentrated faces bent over crossword puzzles. Each represents a different facet of how Americans in the Roaring Twenties chose to spend their leisure time, how they sought connection, entertainment, and meaning in a rapidly changing world. Tomorrow, you think, as you drift towards sleep, you might explore yet another dimension of 1920s leisure, the automobile culture that's transforming American geography and social life. The decade's fascinating with cars, with the freedom of the open road, with auto camping and roadside attractions, represents another revolutionary change in how Americans spend their free time. For now, though, you're content with what you've witnessed, the peculiar pastimes of an era seeking new forms of play, new kinds of games, new tests of human capacity in a world increasingly dominated by machines and efficiency. The Roaring Twenties, for all its glamour and energy, has a playful side, a willingness to embrace the absurd and celebrate feats with no practical purpose beyond their own accomplishment. In this perhaps lies one of the decade's most enduring legacies, the understanding that leisure isn't merely the absence of work, but a space for creativity, for community, for testing limits, and for finding meaning through play. As technologies change and fads come and go, this fundamental insight remains. How we choose to spend our free time defines us as much as how we earn our living. Morning light filters gently through your window, casting warm patterns across your bed. Unlike the harsh cold of the boarding house room where our journey began, you're now in a modest but comfortable hotel room. You've decided to explore beyond the urban excitement of Chicago, to discover another transformative aspect of 1920s American leisure. the automobile culture that's reshaping not just how people travel, but how they live, socialize, and experience their country. After breakfast in the hotel dining room, you step outside to find a busy street scene. What immediately strikes you is the number of automobiles. In just a few short years, cars have transformed from rare luxuries to common sights on American streets. Model Ts, Chevrolets, and Packards navigate the roadways, their engines creating a constant background hum that's becoming the soundtrack of modern American life. On the corner stands a man beside a gleaming black Ford Model T. A small sign in the window reads, "For hire." He catches your eye and calls out, "Need a ride today? Finest automobile service in the city." You approach, curious about this early taxi service. "How much to take me to the edge of town?" you ask. "I'd like to see the countryside." $1.50, he says promptly, and worth every penny. These new roads they're building make for a smooth ride all the way out. The 1920s marks the beginning of America's true love affair with the automobile. Henry Ford's revolutionary assembly line techniques have made cars affordable for the middle class. The Model T, introduced in 1908 at $850, now sells for less than $300, within reach of many working families. By 1925, Ford will have produced over 15 million Model Ts, transforming American mobility forever. You settle into the back seat of the taxi, noticing the simple but functional interior. No radio yet. Car radios won't become common until the 1930s. The leather seat is well worn but comfortable. The driver cranks the engine by hand, and after a moment of resistance, it rumbles to life. "First time visiting?" asks the driver as he pulls away from the curb. You nod. Well, you picked a good time. More Americans on the move now than ever before. Everybody's got a car or wants one. Changed everything, these machines have. He's not exaggerating. The statistics tell the story. In 1918, Americans owned about 6 million passenger cars. By 1929, that number will surge to 23 million. In just over a decade, the United States has become a nation on wheels with one car for every 5 people, a rate of automobile ownership unmatched anywhere else in the world. As the taxi navigates through the city streets, you notice how urban infrastructure is adapting to this new reality. Traffic signals are appearing at busier intersections, parking areas are being designated, service stations with gasoline pumps are becoming fixtures on corner lots. The city itself is being redesigned around the automobile. "Had to learn to drive 2 years ago," the driver continues. "Used to work the streetcar line, but everybody's getting automobiles now. Figured I better change with the times." This too reflects a national trend. Public transportation, the trolleys, streetcars, and interurbans that once connected American communities, is beginning to decline as personal automobiles offer unprecedented freedom of movement. Cities are starting to spread outward along roadways rather than cluster around transit lines. The urban landscape gradually gives way to less densely populated areas. Homes here are newer, with a notable feature that would have been rare a decade earlier: the garage, sometimes attached to the house, sometimes standing separately in the backyard. These structures have evolved from the carriage houses of the previous century. They're physical manifestations of how deeply automobiles have become integrated into American domestic life. "See all these new neighborhoods?" The driver gestures as you pass through an area of modest but attractive homes on small lots. "None of this was here 5 years ago, just farmland. Now look at it. People living out here, driving into the city for work. They call them commuters." The suburbs, as these areas will come to be known, represent one of the automobile's most profound impacts on American life. Cars free families from the necessity of living near public transportation or within walking distance of workplaces and shops. With a reliable automobile, a worker can live miles from their job, trading the density and noise of the city for more space and cleaner air. By the late 1920s, this pattern of development will be firmly established across America. Suburbs will grow faster than city centers, creating the dispersed metropolitan regions that will define American geography for the rest of the century. This transformation has only just begun in 1925, but its outline is already visible in these new neighborhoods on the city's edge. Eventually, the last houses fall away and you find yourself traveling through genuine countryside. Fields stretch out on either side of the road, punctuated by occasional farmhouses and barns. The road itself is a revelation, hard-surfaced and relatively smooth, a far cry from the rutted dirt tracks that once connected rural America. Federal Highway Act came through in 21, the driver explains, noticing your interest in the road. Government's putting money into building better roads all over the country. This one here goes all the way to Indianapolis now, smooth driving the whole way. The Federal Highway Act of 1921 marked a turning point in American transportation. For the first time, the federal government took significant responsibility for funding road construction, creating a national network of highways. This legislation, along with pressure from the Good Roads movement, an alliance of automobile clubs, farmers, and rural mail carriers, is rapidly expanding and improving America's roadways. People are taking real trips now, the driver continues, not just driving around town but going hundreds of miles. Families pack up the car and just go. Camping equipment, food, everything they need. They call it auto camping or tin can tourism. This new form of recreation, the automobile vacation, is revolutionizing American leisure. Before cars, travel was expensive and cumbersome, requiring trains or steamships with fixed schedules and routes. Now, a family can simply load their belongings into their automobile and set off whenever they please, going wherever the roads lead. After about 30 minutes of driving, you spot an unusual sight ahead, a cluster of automobiles parked in a grove of trees beside the road. As you draw closer, you see tents set up, people moving about, cooking fires, sending wisps of smoke into the morning air. Auto camp, the driver says with a nod. Folks travelling through stop here for the night. Some towns are setting up official campgrounds to attract these tourists. Good for local business. You ask the driver to pull over, intrigued by this new form of American recreation. He finds a spot near the camp and agrees to wait while you explore. The auto camp is a fascinating scene, a temporary community of travellers from different parts of the country brought together by the shared experience of automobile tourism. About a dozen cars are parked throughout the area, ranging from modest Model Ts to more luxurious Packards and Buicks. Most have license plates from neighbouring states, though you spot one from as far away as California. Families have created temporary homes around their vehicles. Some have proper canvas tents with cots inside. Others use more improvised shelters, tarpaulins stretched from the car to nearby trees. A few even sleep in their cars, the seats folded down to create makeshift beds. At the centre of the camp, a shared cooking area has been established. Women tend pots over small fires while children play nearby. Men tinker with their automobiles, checking oil levels and tyre pressure in preparation for the day's journey. There's a communal atmosphere with people sharing food, stories and advice about road conditions ahead. You approach a friendly-looking couple sitting in folding chairs beside their Chevrolet. They're middle-aged, dressed in practical clothing suitable for travel. The woman in a simple cotton dress, the man in overalls and a cap. First time at an auto camp, the man asks with a smile, noting your curious observation. You nod, explaining that you're interested in how people are using automobiles for leisure. "Oh, it's the only way to travel now," the woman says enthusiastically. "We're from Ohio, heading west to see Yellowstone. Third summer we've taken a long trip like this. Before we got the car, we hardly ever left our county. Changed our lives completely," the man agrees. "We've seen more of this country in the last 3 years than in all the years before. Met people from everywhere. It's like America's opened up to regular folks like us." Their sentiment captures the democratizing effect of automobile tourism. Before cars, extensive travel was largely the province of the wealthy, who could afford long train journeys and hotel stays. With auto camping, middle-class and even working-class families can experience the breadth of America firsthand, creating their own itineraries and traveling at their own pace. "We're following the National Old Trails Road," the man explains, pulling out a dog-eared map to show you. "Goes all the way from Baltimore to Los Angeles. We'll probably only make it as far as Yellowstone this year, then head back home." The map reveals the growing network of named highways crisscrossing America: the Lincoln Highway, the Dixie Highway, the Yellowstone Trail, and dozens of others. These routes, often cobbled together from existing local roads, are the predecessors of the numbered federal highway system that will emerge later in the decade. "Everybody helps everybody out here," the woman adds. "Last night, a family from Kansas shared their stew with us. We gave them some of our apple pie. You meet the nicest people on the road." This social aspect of auto camping represents another important dimension of car culture. Automobiles are bringing Americans from different regions into contact with each other, creating shared experiences that transcend local identities. The mobile population of auto tourists forms a new kind of community, temporary but meaningful, based on the shared adventure of exploration. After chatting with the couple for a while longer, you thank them and continue exploring the camp. Near the edge of the clearing, you notice something that points to the future of roadside America: a small wooden stand where a local farmer is selling fresh produce to the campers. A hand-painted sign advertises fresh eggs, milk, fruit, travelers welcome. This modest enterprise hints at the roadside economy that will soon develop to serve the needs of automobile travelers. Gas stations, diners, motels, and tourist attractions will proliferate along America's highways, creating an entirely new commercial landscape designed for people in motion. You return to your waiting taxi, your mind filled with images of this new mobile lifestyle. The driver seems pleased when you ask to continue further into the countryside. "I know a spot about 10 miles ahead," he says. "Little roadside stand that makes the best hamburger sandwiches you've ever tasted. Popular stop for folks driving through." As you continue along the highway, you notice how the rhythm of travel has changed with the automobile. Unlike train journeys, with their fixed schedules and predetermined stops, car travel allows for spontaneity and discovery. You can pause wherever something catches your interest, change direction on a whim, explore side roads that look inviting. The landscape flows by at about 35 miles per hour, blazing speed compared to horse-drawn transportation, yet leisurely enough to appreciate the scenery. Through the open windows comes the scent of fields and wildflowers, the sound of birds and distant farm machinery. The automobile has created a new way of experiencing geography. Faster than walking or riding, slower than flying, with a unique intimacy to the land. "There it is," the driver says eventually, pointing to a small building ahead on the right side of the road. "Joe's place. Been here about 3 years now. Started as just a little sandwich stand, but he keeps adding on." Joe's Place represents the embryonic form of the roadside restaurant. It's a simple wooden structure with a gravel parking area out front where several cars are already stopped. A covered porch with bench seating has been added to the original building. Hand-painted signs advertise hot food, cold drinks, and clean restrooms, the essential trinity of roadside services. Inside, the atmosphere is casual and welcoming. About a dozen customers sit at simple tables, most obviously travellers passing through rather than locals. Behind a counter, a burly man, presumably Joe himself, flips hamburgers on a large griddle, while a younger woman takes orders and serves food. You take a seat at a small table, and the woman quickly comes to take your order. The menu is limited but appealing. Hamburger sandwiches, hot dogs, egg sandwiches, pie, coffee, and bottled soft drinks. You order a hamburger and coffee, curious to experience this new form of roadside dining. While waiting for your food, you notice a large map on the wall with pins marking the hometowns of visitors. Pins dot nearly every state, with heavy concentrations in the Midwest. Beside the map, a guest book invites travelers to sign their names and share comments about their journeys. This simple record-keeping reveals another aspect of automobile culture, the pride in distance travelled, in mobility itself. Auto tourists celebrate the scope of their journeys, comparing routes and mileage with fellow travellers. Road trips become accomplishments to document and share, not merely means of getting from one place to another. Your hamburger arrives, a simple but satisfying affair served on a paper plate. The meat is freshly ground, the bun soft and slightly sweet, with pickle, onion and mustard adding tanginess. It's a far cry from elaborate restaurant cuisine, but perfectly suited to the needs of travellers. Quick, portable and filling. As you eat, you overhear conversations around you, travellers exchanging information about road conditions ahead, sharing stories of places they've visited, offering advice about the best routes and stops. Joe's Place functions not just as a restaurant, but as an informal information exchange, a node in the network of automobile travellers. After finishing your meal, you chat briefly with Joe, who's taking a break from the grill. Started this place in 22, he tells you. Just me and a little sandwich stand by the side of the road. Now I've got 4 employees and we're open 7 days a week, sunrise to sunset. What changed, you ask? Cars, he says simply. More and more every year. Families taking trips, salesmen covering their territories, young couples out for drives, the automobile's changing everything out here. Joe's observation captures a fundamental truth about 1920s America. The automobile is not merely a new mode of transportation, it's a transformative technology reshaping patterns of settlement, commerce, recreation, and social interaction. The effects are perhaps most visible here along the roadside, where an entirely new ecosystem of services is evolving to meet the needs of a mobile population. Back in the taxi, you continue your journey, travelling deeper into rural America. The driver points out features of the evolving roadside landscape, a newly built service station with gleaming pumps, a small tourist cabin camp, the predecessor to the motel, a fruit stand operated by a local orchard. Some farmers are making more money from these roadside stands than from their regular crops, the driver explains. Direct to the customer, no middleman, and city folks love stopping for fresh country produce. This direct marketing represents another economic impact of automobile travel. Farmers along major routes discover that selling directly to passing motorists offers better returns than wholesale markets. Some begin to specialize in roadside retailing, expanding their stands into more elaborate attractions with added amenities to entice travelers to stop. As noon approaches, the driver suggests turning onto a side road that leads to a scenic lake. Popular spot for Sunday drives, he explains. Families come out here for picnics and swimming in the summer. The side road is narrower and less improved than the main highway, but still passable for automobiles. After a few miles, it opens onto a beautiful view of a lake surrounded by trees. Several cars are parked along the shoreline, their occupants enjoying the natural setting in various ways. Some picnicking on blankets, others swimming from a small beach, children playing along the water's edge. And Sunday driving has emerged as a popular leisure activity in itself, distinct from practical travel. Families load into their cars with no particular destination in mind, simply enjoying the pleasure of movement and the discovery of scenic places within easy reach of their homes. The automobile extends the radius of weekend recreation from a few miles, the distance comfortably walked or travelled by streetcar, to dozens of miles in any direction. You ask the driver to stop for a while, wanting to observe this aspect of automobile leisure more closely. Leaving the taxi parked under a tree, you walk along the lakeshore, noting the various groups enjoying their day in nature. One family has turned their car into a base camp for the day. The trunk is open, revealing a picnic hamper, folding chairs and various recreational equipment. They've set up an elaborate picnic on a tablecloth spread on the ground, with sandwiches, salads, and a thermos of lemonade. The father shows his son how to skip stones across the water while the mother unpacks the food. Nearby, a young couple sits on a blanket a discreet distance from the family groups. They're clearly enjoying the privacy that automobile transportation has afforded them. Away from the watchful eyes of parents or neighbours, they can spend time alone together in a way that would have been difficult in previous generations. This change in courtship patterns represents one of the automobile's most significant social impacts. Cars provide young couples with private spaces for interaction outside of supervised settings like the family parlour or church social. Parking, finding secluded spots to neck or pet in a car, becomes a common feature of dating culture in the 1920s, contributing to the decade's relaxation of sexual mores. Even more broadly, automobiles are changing the very nature of social interactions. In the pre-automobile era, most people's social circles were geographically constrained, limited to those within walking distance or along public transportation routes. Now, relationships can be maintained across much greater distances. Friends living 10 or 20 miles apart can visit regularly. Extended families can gather more easily for holidays and celebrations. After spending some time observing the lake scene, you return to the taxi for the journey back to the city. The driver takes a different route, offering a new perspective on the changing landscape. Along the way, you pass through a small town that shows clear signs of adaptation to automobile culture. The town's main street has been widened to accommodate diagonal parking spaces in front of the stores. Several service stations occupy prime corner lots. A drugstore advertises curb service, allowing motorists to be served without leaving their cars. A banner stretched across the street announces an upcoming automobile parade as part of a local festival. Towns that don't make themselves friendly to automobiles are dying, the driver comments. The ones that embrace the change, put in good roads and parking, they're thriving. This observation highlights the economic geography of the automobile age. Towns located along major highways prosper, while those bypassed by modern roads face decline. Local business owners lobby for highway routes to pass through their communities, understanding that accessibility to automobile traffic has become essential to commercial success. As you approach the outskirts of the city again, you notice a new development taking shape, a residential subdivision with curving streets and generous lots distinct from the rectilinear grid of older neighborhoods. A large sign announces Suburban Gardens, modern homes for modern families, easy motoring to city centre. This planned suburb represents the mature form of automobile-oriented residential development. Unlike the somewhat haphazard growth along existing roads, these new communities are designed from the ground up with cars in mind: wider streets, larger lots, built-in garages, and convenient access to major thoroughfares leading downtown. Those houses are selling as fast as they can build them, the driver tells you, mostly to young couples with children or planning to have them. They want the fresh air and space for kids to play, but still need to get to jobs in the city. By the mid-1920s, this pattern of suburban development is well established around most American cities. Developers acquire large tracts of farmland, subdivide them into residential lots, and market them to middle-class families as offering the best of both worlds. Country living with city convenience made possible by the family automobile. For many Americans, this suburban ideal represents the fulfillment of deeply held aspirations: home ownership, space, safety, and community, combined with access to urban employment and amenities. The single-family home in a residential suburb, reached by private automobile, becomes the dominant housing form of middle-class America, a pattern that will persist and expand throughout the remainder of the century. As the taxi re-enters the city proper, you notice how urban spaces themselves are being reconceived around automobile use. Downtown streets that once accommodated a mix of pedestrians, horse-drawn vehicles, and streetcars are now dominated by cars and trucks. Parking has become a major concern, with dedicated lots appearing on formerly built-up blocks. Traffic control becomes more formalized, with painted lane markings and standardized signals replacing the ad hoc methods of earlier years. These changes reflect how completely the automobile has been integrated into American life by the mid-1920s. What began as a luxury item for the wealthy has become an essential tool for millions of families, reshaping not just transportation but patterns of residence, commerce, recreation, and social interaction. Back at your hotel, you settle in your comfortable room as evening approaches. Through the window, you can still hear the sounds of automobile traffic, a constant reminder of the mobility that defines this era. Your journey today has shown you yet another dimension of how Americans spend their leisure time in the Roaring Twenties, not just in speakeasies or movie palaces or dance halls, but on the open road, discovering their country at their own pace. As darkness falls, you reflect on all you've witnessed throughout your exploration of 1920s American leisure. From the underground excitement of Prohibition-era nightlife to the revolutionary freedom of flapper culture, from the mass spectacles of baseball and cinema to the bizarre endurance contests like flagpole sitting and dance marathons, from the quiet intellectual pleasures of crossword puzzles to the expansive possibilities of automobile tourism, each represents a facet of how Americans have reinvented their free time in this dynamic decade.